Hey all you cats and chicks out there, welcome back to Control Players Unite. I'm your host, Dr. Red. Today we are presenting on how to play 3 different aggro-control decks. Which ones, Dr. Red? First, we will learn Revavroom EX. We're going to start with him because he's the longest of the 3. Next, Alakazam EX. Last, Tsareena EX. The deck lists are in the description. For each deck in turn, we're going to follow steps 1 through 5. What makes them aggro-control? Then a basic strategy, followed by an advanced strategy. I will provide a sample build and give recommendations thereof. Then we will have an overall conclusion. Please note, at Control Players Unite, we hold that aggro control means a deck with 2 primary win conditions: prize taking and frustration or wearing down of an opponent's resources, meaning that the pilot can seek one or both of these ends at the same time and does not need to rely on one as a backup plan. We say this to get the conversation started. And so, let's begin. What makes Revavroom EX aggro control? One word, ladies and gentlemen, this thing is a tank. Oh my goodness, is it a tank, and you will see why shortly. Let's look at some basic strategy. First, it's a 280 HP stage 1 Pokemon, nothing shabby there. But then we want to look at its ability tune-up. It states, this Pokemon may have up to 4 tools attached to it. That's 3 more than the normal 1. It also has an attack with 2-hit KO potential. Wild Drift does 170 damage for 2 metal and a colorless energy. But now we look at the attack effect. During your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 30 less damage from attacks. That's quite interesting. So what kind of tools can we attach? Well, there's one in particular, Rigid Band. The stage 1 Pokemon this card is attached to takes 30 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. And to get Revavroom EX charged up to attack, we need Metang with its Metal Maker ability. It states that once during your turn, you may look at the top 4 cards of your deck and attach any number of basic Metal Energy cards you find there to your Pokemon any way you like. So, with Revavroom EX plus 4 copies of Rigid Band attached to it equals minus 150 damage every time you attack. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, 150 damage before you start to take hit points on Revavroom EX because of its attack, Wild Drift, giving us minus 30 as well. So with a base 280 HP, that gives you effectively 430 HP because your opponent would have to hit you with 430 HP to one-hit KO you. But wait, there's more! The advanced strategy allows us to attach Hero's Cape, which states that this Pokemon gets plus 100 HP. So the 280 HP plus the Hero's Cape gives us 380 HP as a base to work from. And because we're replacing a Rigid Band, but we're still using the Wild Drift attack with the effect of minus 30 damage reduction, we have a grand total of minus 120 damage on the next turn, giving us effectively a 500 HP Pokemon. I am not making this up. Your opponent will need 500 HP to KO you. And not many Pokemon are KOing that. And even if they can, like Roaring Moon EX's Gouging, Frenzied Gouging, or Giratina V-Star's Lost Impact, I think that's the attack name, slap a Mist Energy on Revavroom and you're good to go. Our advanced strategy states that now we have even more tools under our belt to reduce damage even further. Full Metal Lab states that metal Pokemon take 30 less damage from attacks, and Radiant Tsareena's Elegant Heal ability states that once during your turn, you may heal 20 damage from each of your Pokemon. So, with the 500 HP base established by Hero's Cape, plus the minus 30 damage Full Metal Lab offers, will equal Revavroom EX effectively having 530 HP. If you add Radiant Tsareena onto it, you're further reducing damage by 20 for 550 HP effectively. Now remember, ladies and gentlemen, that's after your opponent's turn is over, so they could KO you, but they're going to have to do 530 damage to do it. And because you're reducing 20, you're basically you're forcing your opponent to make up for that 20 HP on the next turn. So here's a sample build. There's a baby Revavroom for draw support, and I included Radiant Greninja for extra draw support, but you can cut him for Radiant Tsareena. We have 1 copy of Metagross with a 1 Metal Energy attack in case our opponent wants to gust up Metang. There is a single prize Zamazenta with the Metal Shield ability, which reduces all damage by 30. So with Metal Lab, you effectively have a 190 HP basic. I also included some leftovers in case you don't want to put 3 to 4 Rigid Bands on one Revavroom EX, but that's up to you. My only other recommendation is to include Mist Energy. So let's move on. What makes Alakazam EX Aggro-Control? Its ability to both snipe and stall at the exact same time. What are you talking about, Dr. Red? What do you mean we can snipe and stall at the same time? Well, first of all, it's a 310 HP Stage 2 Pokemon. It doesn't have any abilities. But let's look at the Attack Dimensional Hand's effect. It says this attack can be used even if this Pokemon is on the bench. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, you can attack from the bench. This is the first time in Pokemon TCG history that a Pokemon can attack from the bench, and it is terrifying. Okay, Dr. Red, that's the sniping part, but what about the stalling? I'm glad you asked. You can put any number of Pokemon in the active to stall your opponent. You have Mimikyu with the Safeguard ability, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Pokemon EX and V. You have Iron Thorns EX with the Initialization ability. As long as this Pokemon is in the active, Pokemon with a rule box in play have no abilities except for future Pokemon, and its 230 HP isn't bad for tanking. You also have Klefki, Mischievous Lock ability. As long as this Pokemon is in the active, basic Pokemon in play have no abilities except for Mischievous Lock. You have the new Cornerstone Mask Ogre Pawn EX with the Cornerstone Stance ability. Prevent all damage from attacks done to this Pokemon by your opponent's Pokemon that have an ability. And then we have Fluttermane, Midnight Fluttering. As long as this Pokemon is in the active, your opponent's active Pokemon have no abilities. So if your opponent evolves into Charizard EX, it cannot accelerate 3 fire energy to its fellow Pokemon. There's other options too, but you can figure those out for yourself. The advanced strategy. Ooh, Dr. Red, thank you very much, but I want something else. Something deeper. What do you got? Okay, if chipping away at your opponent's active isn't enough from the bench, why not try chipping away at your opponent's bench with Baby Alakazam? It has an attack Strange Hacking for a single Psychic Energy. It reads, your opponent's active Pokemon is now confused. You may move any number of damage counters from your opponent's Pokemon to their other Pokemon in any way you like. So instead of keeping Mimikyu in the active against a high HP EX, you put this guy in after using Dimensional Hand twice and spread the 240 damage to the opponent's bench, KOing a host of smaller HP Pokemon. It's essentially functioning as a spread card. Here's a sample build. Bibarel is the draw engine, and you're going to need it, so get him out while you're setting up your Abras. Everything else seems pretty self-explanatory given what we just said. My recommendations. You might try Bravery Charm or Heroescape on your stalling basic for a tanking approach, in which case you'd have to substitute a Stadium for Jamming Tower. But Lost City wouldn't hurt either, but if you don't want to do that, an extra Jamming Tower wouldn't hurt. You could also drop an Iono. Also, note the inclusion of Manaphy, but you might consider Rapska if you're afraid of damage counters. So let's move on to the final Pokemon. What makes Tsareena EX Aggro-Control? Essentially, ladies and gentlemen, it's damage counter placement and the pressure coming with it, and Tsareena's healing potential. Let's look at these in the basic strategy. Like Alakazam, Tsareena EX is a 310 HP Stage 2 Pokemon without abilities. But let's look at its attacks effects. Icicle Soul for a single Grass Energy states, put damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon until its remaining HP is 30. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, no matter what your opponent's Pokemon's HP is, if it's a Dragapult 320, you put on 290, so 29 damage counters and so on. Doesn't matter how high it is. We also have Trop Kick, 2 Grass Energy, 180 base damage, heal 30 damage from this Pokemon, and it recovers from all special conditions. So there's a healing aspect thereof. Now, what about Icicle Soul? How are you going to KO a Pokemon with 30 HP remaining, if you can't simply get it in the active for Trop Kick? You'll use Frostlass or Hisuian Braviary, and then attach a Panic Mask to Tsareena EX. Dr. Red, what on earth are you talking about? I'm talking about Frostlass with the Freezing Shroud ability. During Pokemon Checkup, put a damage counter on each Pokemon that has an ability, both yours and your opponent's, except any Frostlass. So if you were to put damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon with to the point that they only have 30 HP left, and you have 3 Frostlass in play, and that opponent's Pokemon with an ability will be KO'd on the very next turn without you having to do anything. But suppose you have to put damage counters on an opponent's Pokemon that doesn't have an ability. That's where Hisuian Braviary comes into play with its Eerie Cry attack. It's a free attack that places 3 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon that have any damage counters on it. So for example, Dragapult EX doesn't have an ability, so you use Icicle Soul to reduce it down to 30 HP, and then you clean it up with Hisuian Braviary. You then attach a Panic Mask to Tsareena EX that states, prevent all damage done to the Pokemon this card is attached to by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon that have 40 HP or less remaining. So if Dragapult has 290 out of 320, it cannot hurt your Tsareena EX with a Panic Mask attached. And now for the advanced strategy. Vanillix! Wait a minute, Dr. Red, are you saying Vanillix is advanced? We've had this card for a while now. That's because, ladies and gentlemen, compared to the new Frostlass, this card delays taking KOs, giving your opponent time to heal. Frostlass will just put damage counters on the Pokemon, KOing it immediately if you have 3 of them in play, denying even the need for Hisuian Braviary. Of course, Vanillix is welcome anyhow for those pesky non-ability Pokemon, so it works just as well, except you need room for it. Here's a sample build. We have Radiant Alakazam to move damage counters from ability Pokemon to non-ability ones. That way Hisuian Braviary can do his job, even if it's slowly. Rotom V is there for early game draw and setup. Salvatore helps get Braviary into play on one turn, or a Steenie if need be. Hassel is grand for getting what you need after a KO, such as a rare candy and an energy. And the Hyper Aroma is there to get, preferably, 3 Frostlass at once, but you can also use it for Braviary and Steenie. My recommendations. Replace one of the Braviary or Tsareena lines with a 1/1 of Vanillite Vanillix, and increase the rare candies to 4. I'd also recommend including some healing trainers, such as maybe the rarely used Saguaro, which heals 50 damage from 2 Pokemon. That'll take care of Manaphy, Alakazam, and Rotom V from suffering from Frostlass's Freezing Shroud ability. There's also a no healing option with the Abomasnow from Palkia Evolved. The Abomasnow has an ability called Freezing Disaster. No Pokemon can be healed, so that would take care of those pesky switch cards in Lost Zone decks. Now let's conclude. These decks do 2 things at once. Revavroom EX 2-hit KOs and tanks. Alakazam EX snipes and stalls. Tsareena EX has damage counter placement with the pressure that comes with it, and it heals. Thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. What did I miss? Where am I wrong? Please leave a comment. Take care of yourselves, and may God hold you in the palm of his hand.